Hello, everybody. Welcome to Harness Up with Haste Draft Horses and Mules. Guys, today for our episode, I made the trip out here to the beautiful city of Townsend, Montana. We're up on the hill above the Missouri River out here looking at the mountains. Boy, it's beautiful. And I've got a guest here I want to introduce to you guys. I've watched this guy on YouTube a long time, and he is a true just a Montana ranch guy. And I'm so excited to be here and introduce you all to him. Mr. Trinity Vandenacre.
How you doing?
I'm good, buddy. So
Good.
glad to be here and glad to meet you. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about what got you started doing what you do and all that good stuff.
Well, I guess say I'm more of a entrepreneur cowboy. That's what I am. I grew up doing all kinds of different ranch industry stuff. My dad owns a horse leasing company, so we were always on some. And my dad's kind of an original, what I think of as original type cowboy. Not like me. He thinks in more of terms of like, this may not hurt, so let's give it a try. And I think of more like, let's think about this and not get hurt, so let's do it the best way. And so he'll throw you up on some horse all the time, and that's how I grew up, here, ride this thing, and he's going to help me and, team roping and ranch work and stuff from Conrad. And then when he started getting back into agriculture, when he started the horse leasing company, he was trying to figure out a way to make money in agriculture, but be a part of something that actually had money in it. So that's why he did horse leasing, which is kind of affiliated more with tourism. Okay. And so I managed that ever since I was about 19 for about 20 years, and discovered how much money ranching and working your butt off dawn to dark actually makes. And so I worked on a lot of different things, trying to make money. I was always starting some little business on the side, and started doing YouTube about 6 years ago, but just for giggles, just making family videos and everything. And then about 2 years ago, I decided to actually, hey, maybe I could actually do something with this YouTube stuff. So
it works. I mean, a lot of people's doing things with YouTube now I never dreamed would ever happen. I mean, it's unreal. You mentioned Conrad, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
A good customer of mine, friend of mine, Kim Harris from Conrad. Do you know Kim?
I don't.
Makes Harris traps.
Oh,
he's
yeah,
from Conrad.
I've heard of that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where my family is originally from, which is up on what's called the High Line. It's up by Canada.
I've been there. I sold a horse to a lady named Donna. Griffin Farm and Grains up on the High Line up there.
Oh, yeah?
We made the trip up there. Boy, that's a different world.
It is. It's out in the middle of a lot less. Let's just say that. It's not not nothing, but it's a lot less than here or anywhere else that around here.
Shout out to Kim Harris, Conrad, Montana, and Miss Donna up on the High Line. I know you all probably be listening, so hello to you guys. So how long did you work for your dad in that?
Well, when I got married, I worked for him since I was about 16, but I got married at 18, and my dad got a really bad horse accident that same year in September. I got married in April. He got in a horse accident in September, and so I kind of had to take over most of that business for about 17 years till my dad was able to kind of step back in and do most of it. So now he manages it again. This is 27 years later. So for the last 10 years, he's been doing most of the business again. I think he's winding it down a little bit on the horse leasing side. He's got some cows that we mess around with and everything, but he's getting older. Yeah. He keeps getting busted up. Every time he gets healed up, he gets another head injury, getting bucked off or something. So
I see. What's your favorite horse that you ride? You got your own horse now you ride? Or?
No, I stole my dad's.
I see.
So the one I was riding died, and my dad had just gotten another horse wreck, and he had a young horse. It's just a gorgeous horse. I don't know if you've seen him on any of my videos.
I have.
His name is Calabar.
Yep.
And so he was 3 years old sitting there in the pen, and I was like, well, Dad's going to take a year to heal up. I probably better help him out and ride this horse for him. So I've been riding him ever since.
I've been a fan of your videos a long time. One of my favorite videos you ever done is when you was out looking for those wild horses.
That was interesting.
That was a
really
interesting video.
I can't remember. I did 2 of them on the wild horses. So the first one is when I couldn't find them.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. really interesting thing. I thought a lot more people cared deeply about wild horses. I think horses are a big issue to people, but I don't think there's a lot of people who are very familiar with wild horses.
Speaking of that, yeah, I mean, these wild horses, they are a different breed.
Yeah, well, and they're kind of mixed in now genetically, DNA. There's no DNA in the wild horses that we can't find in domestic horses anymore. They have mixed enough, but like the ones in, I think you might be talking about the ones in Pryor Mountains.
Yeah,
Pryor Mountains is pretty isolated. It's not rural. I mean, there's horses right across the fence from Pryor Mountain Wild Horse Range, and all the Pryor Mountain Wild Horses are named and have their own photo taken and description of them every year. So you can go down to so I don't know, wild, maybe it's a different term of wild. I mean, they're wild. I mean, they're not touched, but so I actually took the booklet they give you that has all the pictures of the horses in it and their ages and who they run with and where they are typically. On the second trip, I went out and found a specific herd.
Funny thing you're mentioning this, me and my wife was just on our way back from Billings to Laurel, where her parents live, yesterday, and she said, we need to go to the Pryors and see the wild horses. She wants to do that, wants to take me sometime this summer maybe. So,
but if you go down there, you need to see, well, I'm sure you will, but make sure you see the canyon too, because that is phenomenal. Bighorn Canyon, I didn't even know that existed in Montana, and I was like, what? This is like, I mean, it's huge.
I've been wanting to go see that for a while now already.
Have you?
Been coming out here a long time, but I think you could live here your whole life, like you just said, and still not see all of Montana.
Well, yeah, like I said, I was born in Conrad, so I lived here all my life and didn't have any idea that I'd never gone down to see those wild horses. I didn't even realize we had that herd of wild horses in Montana, and which is funny. It's a fairly well-known herd.
Yeah.
Now they have another herd that's starting up by Missoula, but it's kind of somebody's bucking horse stock got loose like 10 years ago, and they're starting to reproduce up there in the Lolo area.
Those are probably some pretty chunky, big wild horses out of bucking horse stock.
Yeah, and I bet you they're hard to break too if you ever catch any, because see, that's a different kind of deal because they're not really classified as anything yet, as far as I know. So if you can catch them, you can have them.
Wow.
So they're kind of more like the original wild horses were, but I'm not sure from a bucking stock herd how good they'd be for riding.
We recently bought a blue roan mare. She's a 4-year-old, and she's out of Canada. And we bought her from an Amish guy in Ohio, a guy I know. And we just bought her for my wife to keep as like her own personal mare, you know. And that horse is, I think she's bucking stock. She's got a 142 branded all the way down her side.
Mm-hmm. Could be. I used to ride a horse from Browning. We called him Get Her Done because he was not real big, but had tons of heart.
Okay.
He came out of a bucking string. And he could still buck. You had to watch him a little bit. But when he wasn't bucking, he was phenomenal. But
this mare is like so calm and just gentle.
Really?
If anybody out there knows what the 142 is down the side of that horse, you know, call me. I'd like to know what some of her history maybe. But
right.
That's what she's got all the way down her side, 142.
You know, speaking of bucking horses, we had this gray horse. He was really pretty. He was like quarter draft, so big and leggy and, you know, feather-footed. Mm-hmm. And he was a dapple gray. And we bought him when he was 4 years old because he was really gentle and you could ride him and everything at that point. You know, it's with the horse leasing business, you have to buy stuff that, you know, pretty much everybody can get along with. It can't be pretty fiery or nothing, right?
They're going for dude horses, ain't they?
Yes, really gentle. So he was gentle, but young, so we could send him out to the outfitters and things like that where he could go long distances. When he turned about 12 years old, I mean, phenomenal horse. Everybody loved him. All of a sudden, people were telling us for 2 years that he keeps bucking people off. And we're like, "Are you, Cody? Are you kidding me? No way. That he ain't doing that." So we took him back home, and we're like, we put somebody on him, and he could flat buck. He just decided one day at 12 years old that he was never going to be ridden again. And amazing bronc. We put him in a couple rodeos, and unbelievable amount of buck in that horse because when they get to that point, but he'd fool somebody because he'll walk up and nuzzle you, be your best buddy. I mean, he's always used to people, so he don't care about that. He's not like your typical bucking horse, where he's scared.
One thing I've always wanted to go to in Montana is that Miles City bucking horse sale.
Yeah, I have never gone there.
I've never either. I'm thought about maybe going this year, but I don't know. I'd love to go see it.
One thing people doesn't maybe not realize sometimes, I'm over in the western half of Montana, and Miles City's on the other side of Montana. And even though it's in the same state, so you're like, well, you've never been there in Montana? Yeah, but it's 400 and something miles away. I mean, it's a long ways.
It's unreal, the size of this place. Like at home back in Kentucky, we live in Liberty, Kentucky. I can be all the way to Paducah in 3 hours, the far western side, and all the way to Pikeville in 3 hours. But the roads at home are so small compared to here.
Like narrow?
Yeah, like they're not as wide.
Right.
And you got curves, up and down, gnarly hills. And it takes a lot longer to drive 150 mile at home than it does here. But Montana, when I first started coming out, it just blew my mind.
Yeah. How far you can go and still be in the state. Yeah.
I still can't grasp it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if you've never been to Montana, make the trip. It's worth every mile. It's beautiful here.
And it's very different from one side of the state to the other. Because the western side of the state, have you ever been over on the Kalispell side and everything?
Yep.
Western side of the state's all, forest and I'd say pine tree rainforest kind of on that side. Or on the other side of the Continental Divide. And then you go out to eastern Montana and it's rolling prairie and sagebrush and, it's just so different. People, I've done a lot of videos where people say, what happened to all the trees? Did you cut down all the trees? I'm like, there wasn't ever any trees here.
Well, used to, when I first started coming out here, I was like, this is so, how does somebody even live here? How do these cattle even eat? Like,
yeah.
At home, you can put one cow and calf on 1 acre from March to November, and you got grass. Out here, how many cow is it per acre in most places?
We figure 40 acres per cow. That is an interesting concept because a lot of people will, they think they want to go ranching or start ranching. So they say, well, I want to go to Montana. But that's because they've been sold Montana. Montana it is beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. But it's got a very short growing season. You got lots of winter. So that's why you have that 40 acres per cow is the growing season. The grass is only green in June. May, most of June, and sometimes into August, and then it's brown. That's it. That's its only growing portion. So you got to have a lot of acres per cow, and you got to feed something in the wintertime. Usually got to have hay in the wintertime. So if you were starting ranching, I would say you're better off is like raising cattle to go somewhere that's a little easier to, as far as making money. Mm-hmm. Buying feed is the biggest cost in ranching. So if you're going to have 40 acres per cow, you got to have so many acres for 100 cows. Whereas down south or, other places that I know of, you only need 100 acres.
Yeah.
Up here, you got to have 2,000. So
when you come up here, though, when it's green, like even in the far eastern part of Montana, when it's green and that sagebrush has a different color to it when the grass is green.
Olive green.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Used to, I thought, man, this place is so
desolate.
But now, I go to those brown places and those sagebrush places like far Montana, Wyoming. I think it's beautiful. It's got its own beauty, and it's just crazy. Something like when you get used to something. I told my mother-in-law and father-in-law yesterday, I said, I've been coming out here so much now, I don't even feel like it's new anymore. It just kind of looks normal.
Well, I can imagine too, like when you were coming across the plains back in the day with wagon train, or when you were coming out here when there was nothing out here, how vast of an expanse that was. I mean, because you can see forever, but you can't see anything. You're just seeing more land for days and days and days. And a lot of them, a lot of those wagon trains would only go 15 miles a day, and they'd sometimes camp inside of their last camp. It had to be disheartening.
Sometimes when we're driving teams at home, we're sitting back, just sitting behind a big team of horses. I sit there and think, man, could you imagine driving this team across the Oregon Trail all the way? How rough that was on those people.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it blows my mind.
And horses, too.
I still think about it when I come out here. Like, golly, they was some tough people.
Oh, they were. They were tough.
We've had some people.
Tougher than me.
We've had some people on YouTube and Facebook and stuff. We'll put a short out, like, or a video of our animals, and people will be like, man, you're being hard on those horses or something. Like, we had this one video we had, it was two Perchins pulling a grain bin, small gravity wagon of ear corn. Now, this corn was dry. It did. Me and my partner Henry could move it with our hands.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Those two Perchins, man, they handled that corn like it was nothing.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, it caused a big ruckus on Facebook.
Oh, it did.
Oh, yeah.
Of course it did.
And the video, the short on Facebook, well, the reel on Facebook, went 3.2 million views because of that. And they're like, how do you do that to those horses? And I thought to myself, my wife may have responded, I don't know if she did or not, but like, what do you think it was when they come across the country on the Oregon Trail pulling all their equipment, their kids, their families? That's what horses are made to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're made to work like that. A lot of people don't know a Perchin horse, draft horse, or any horse in general, they'll pull 3 times their body weight.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So you got a 2,000-pound horse, 6,000 times 2, 12,000. Them horses are capable of a lot more than what people think sometimes.
Oh, yeah. And back in the day when they were doing the dragon trains, though, they had to do that every single day, all day long, and try to figure out feed. And, it was really hard on them.
Exactly.
That was hard on the animals because even so my part of my family, on my dad's side, homesteaded in Montana near Conrad in a place called the Knees.
I've heard of it.
So where their homestead was didn't have water. They had to dig a well. So while they were digging a well that first year, they had to hire a guy. He would take a wagon and leave there and go 15 miles over to the river. I think it's the Muscle Shell, but the Muscle Shell River, and get water, fill barrels with the water, and he'd stay there overnight, and then 15 miles back the next day and stay there, dump off all the water, and then head back. That's all he did, was just back and forth to the river all summer and all winter just to keep them in water.
The quality of feed, though, now we're feeding these horses nowadays.
Oh, yeah, so much better.
Versus that.
Oh, so much better.
I mean, these horses nowadays are a whole lot more, they're just ready.
Oh, yeah.
We order all of our hay from Utah now.
Really?
We got a semi-load yesterday, or today actually, this morning. Back home, 60 bales of alfalfa. We're feeding pure alfalfa out of Utah. Already got the fresh first cutting already.
So a lot of people think that you should be feeding your horses all grass hay. What do you think?
I'd have to disagree. I used to think that. Myself. We thought that our horses would colic on straight alfalfa, or it'd burn their kidneys up, or something bad would happen. But there was a guy that I know, he's a standardbred racer. Races on the track. He said, Stephen, pour it to them. They're made for it. It's not going to hurt them. Once their body gets full on that alfalfa, they'll start eating less because it don't take as much. And we've noticed, man, I can buy a 3x3 bale, take a bale of alfalfa, a big square, and put it in the barn and feed a flake of a morning, a flake in the afternoon, a flake at night. Them horses don't even clean it up. They're so full. They're so shiny, so slick. It works.
Well, it must have, it does have a lot more nutrients in it too. So for, as long as I can remember, we've always fed straight alfalfa, pretty much straight alfalfa to our horses. And like I say, you don't have to feed as much, but they also have more energy. So you got to be, because it's like feeding them a little better nutrient, right? So if we had a horse that was really hot, like that didn't need very much energy at all, we could mix off grass with him quite a bit more, because it doesn't some of that really good alfalfa stuff, if you're riding a horse every day, like really hard. Like I used to pack for an outfitter. So I was packing for 2 days, and I'd come back and move cows, in the mountains, which is pretty good work on them, and then go back up and pack for an outfitter. And that alfalfa came in really handy then, because you're giving them so much more nutrition in the same amount of feed.
Well, see, we're working these teams. We're training draft horses. We're working them every day.
Mm-hmm.
Harness them early, unharness them late. When I'm training a 2-year-old team, I want them hot as I can get them. I want as bad as it's going to be. I want them fired up and ready. Well, I train them when they're low down, not fed up perfect. Then you sell them to somebody. They're going to feed them really good, because when people pay good money for a finished draft team, they're going to take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're going to feed alfalfa, because we sell horses out here more than anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's out here to feed. I want to train them on what we're feeding, on what they're feeding out here, and I want them on high protein stuff, hot as I can get them. That's how we train them. And the alfalfa, I'll be honest, I hate to say this, but Kentucky alfalfa, we can't compete with y'all out here.
Does it rain too much there or something? Or?
I think it's too wet.
Yeah.
And maybe too humid.
Because alfalfa grows really well if you could have no rain and just put irrigation on it in between cuttings and then grow in like sand. Something that doesn't hold a lot of water real good.
Or clay.
Then it seems to work. And clay holds water really good. So it's probably sitting in water, and it doesn't do real well with that.
This soil out here in these high desert country, if you put water to it, you can grow anything.
Well, but it takes a lot of water.
Yeah.
And a lot of it takes a ton of fertilizer too, because it doesn't hold nutrients.
Yeah.
You pour water to it like it needs it, then it just kind of flushes everything down below the roots. So you got to be careful how much water you put on something, but it can take a ton of water before it actually is over.
This hay we're getting from Utah is unreal.
Yeah.
Like what we got now, it's green all over because it hadn't set out. It was just baled already.
Mm-hmm.
But what we get, like if it's been on a farm for a while, it gets so yellow on the outside. You cut those strings and it falls open, it'll put your eyes out.
Mm.
It's like really green, nice alfalfa.
So speaking of this, because everybody's been haying around here, or putting up hay, growing hay and cutting it and putting it up for, I don't know, 60, 70 years. No, probably 80, 90 years around here now. Used to be just grass, but now they're, most places are doing alfalfa. My grandfather lived on the Fairfield Bench. It was called the Fairfield Bench. And as a kid growing up, his job was to drive a team around a hayfield. I think he was raking. Mm-hmm. I think in a bunch rake, where they bunch it up and kick it. But their draft horses weren't necessarily broke at all. So they would start out in the spring, and this guy would give them horses to use. And what he actually did was give them horses so they could break them. By the end of the haying season, then he would sell them. And then he'd give them new ones in the next year,
That is the best thing for a team of draft horses. If you got a farmer that's going to work horses all spring and summer, fall, you put that team with a farmer for a season, you got a good team.
So my grandpa, being younger, he said all he can remember is that he would spend the whole day leaning back on them reins because they were, unbroke. He said at one time in the spring, they had 6 runaways going on in the same field. I mean, that's how pretty much wild these things were when they started. And he would wake up in the morning and he had pulled his covers up all the way to his neck every night because he was dreaming of pulling back on them reins all the time.
Here lately, like recently, man, I don't know what the difference is in it, but the way it's went lately, so many ranchers are calling me from here in Montana teams. We want draft horse teams, and they're feeding with them. That's what they're doing.
Oh yeah,
they're feeding with teams.
Mm-hmm. I've been to a couple places that do. Are they starting to do more of it now? You think, or
the draft horse industry in the last 5 years has changed and went through the roof higher than I ever dreamed or anticipated.
Mm.
And it's not only older people wanting to do it. Young people. These young people are getting into it. I sell to a guy over in Wyoming in a town called Thane, Wyoming.
Heard of it? Yeah. I think I drove through it.
He feeds elk for the Forest Service. And
Okay.
I sold him teams up at Jackson Hole.
Mm-hmm.
He feeds elk all winter with the horses.
Oh, okay.
Pretty neat.
Yeah.
But we sell to a lot of that stuff out here. I mean, and a lot of sleigh ride companies out here too, big time. Take people for tourism on sleighs.
Yeah.
But yeah, the draft horses it's wild out here now. People want them like crazy, seems like.
Well, it used to be, have you ever read Will James?
No, I'm not.
He's like a sketch artist from back in the 1890s through the 1920s or 30s, and he was a cowboy out here in the plains, and he rode all the way from Canada all the way down to Mexico. And he said back then, the further you got north, which is kind of the same now, but we've mixed them up a little bit, the horses would just get bigger and bigger as you went north, and they were drafty, really drafty when you got up into Canada.
Oh yeah.
Which meant that they were harder to ride. The bucking horses were harder to ride up there because they had so much power. Mm-hmm. So when he went back down to Mexico area, he said, I could ride anything down there because they would buck really hard, but they didn't have near the power that these ones up here in the north had.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of pulling, like horse pulling competitions out here now. Like a lot of people, there's some boys from Idaho that call me a lot wanting horses to pull. Like they're in.
Really?
They want to do competitions out here. They're doing that as well. So the draft horse industry is good, and we've been blessed. It's
horsepower.
Been really good for us.
Mm-hmm.
So
real horsepower.
That's right. Real horsepower.
It is, feeding with a team is pretty cool. It's a lot more work if you're feeding like every single day. Because you have to, go harness everything up and instead of just turning on a tractor, right? So somebody's got to be fairly dedicated, and you got to know a little bit about what they're doing. I mean,
you know what I think some of it is, though? I think in today's time, the pace of life is so fast.
Oh, it's so fast. Mm-hmm.
And some people just want to slow down a little bit and get back to enjoying ranching instead of just turning that tractor on and getting it done and going and doing something, something else just quick.
Mm-hmm.
They want to slow down, enjoy their ranch, enjoy their cattle, and that's where the horses come in.
I think it's a good idea because I think a lot of times ranchers spend so much time worrying about whether they're making a dollar or whether I do the same thing. I think we all do to a certain extent. We're like always trying to push that envelope of time instead of taking the time to enjoy what we're doing. And remembering why we're doing it in the first place, If
I was a rancher out here, man, I'd be in a bad shape. I can't handle cold.
Oh, you can't handle the cold.
I hate snow and cold.
Yeah, the cold is pretty.
You'd have to be tough to really ranch with horses in this country.
Yeah, and I don't end up riding a whole lot in the wintertime after hunting season, or about January, I guess. Just because everything turns to ice and, everything's frozen and all the cows are close to home anyway. I mean, nobody's really got a whole lot that are out somewhere where you need to go get them too far away, typically in that, because they have to feed them and keep an eye on them and stuff in the cold. And so this time of year, they're going to start spreading out again. But
the history of ranching out here is so big. Like it's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Back home in Kentucky, you don't have ranches.
Don't you?
It's farms.
Are they called? They're just called farms, and they do the same thing.
I'm gonna take you to the farm.
Okay.
Let's go out to the farm.
Gotcha.
Out here, let's go out to the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
What? I mean, I don't know why they do that, but you just don't hear ranch in Kentucky. Period.
I've tried to figure out exactly what the difference is. There's a difference between farm and ranching as far as the term goes. If somebody's raising crops, that's definitely farming. If you're raising cattle, that can be ranching. But where they cross over the line, because almost every ranch has farming at the same time. Most all of them raise hay, at least. And when you're raising hay, you typically have, rotational crops or something. So somebody's farming on that property usually, but yet we call them ranches. So I kind of figure if you're doing mostly cows, if you're a cow guy, then I assume that's a ranch. But they kind of get mixed. Farm and ranch kind of gets mixed sometimes out here.
When I think of ranching, I think of cowboy hats, ropes.
So is there not a lot of cowboy hats over in Kentucky?
I can wear my hat into our town.
Yeah.
And I'll be the only one with a hat on.
Really?
Just don't see it. I don't know how our Western store in Lexington, like the boot store, stays in business.
Like the boot barn? It have a boot barn?
No, it's a private owned store.
Oh, okay.
I bought this hat there, but they sell nice hats. But I don't know. There's just not enough people buy them.
Yeah.
Now, what is popular back home is these flat bill Western, like hooey hats, and all the young boys are wearing those baseball flat bills.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, they aren't too popular here anymore. They were like for a short period of time, but we mostly have the regular baseball caps, and jeans,
Well, back home, I was talking, we got a local little Western store there in Somerset, Kentucky. And I went in there and I was looking for some, like a cinch button-up shirt or, some nice shirts and stuff. He said, man, I'd love to stock them, but he said it won't do me no good. Nobody won't buy them. He said, I sell boots if they're under $200 and flat bill hats and Western T-shirts. He said, that's what sells here.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, is the temperature considerably warmer there, apparently?
We get hot. Like in the summer, 85, 95 every day from June to the end of August and 100% humidity.
See, I think that's one of the major differences because we get 80, somewhere between 80 and 90, 95 quite often in the summertime, maybe for a shorter period of time, but it's totally dry. I mean, your skin just dries out and it's like there's no humidity is at like 20% or something like that.
That was one thing that was hard for me coming out here too. I still get it. I get dry and stopped up and my skin's cracking. Mm-hmm. You have to drink a lot of water out here.
And a lot of people have to use a lot of lotion because their skin just doesn't handle the dry air. I mean,
and your lips chap.
Yeah.
But I love it. I love it out here. It's got a feel to it. I couldn't never live out here full time. I'd miss home too bad, but I can come quite a bit.
Nice
probably.
To visit.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ranching world, branding too. Y'all brand calves, brand your cattle. At home, that don't happen.
They don't brand at all?
There's no brand. Kentucky's a no brand state. Most farms at home don't even have their own brand.
So what, but they don't, do they run mostly on their own property?
Yes.
So out here you have, one of the reasons we do brand is because everybody's mixing stuff. I mean, so when you're running them up in the mountains, this is something people do not understand when they're not in this lifestyle, because I get comments all the time when I mention wolves, that somebody should be out there watching those cows all the time. And I'm like, I don't think you realize what that looks like. The field is 300 acres where the cows are right now, and it's impossible to watch that full time. But that's just for this part of the year. As soon as they start going out into bigger pastures, you're talking forests where people don't find 30 head of cows for a year. I mean, so if you move up into the mountains, if you spent much time up there, if they get out somewhere, a lot of times you'll have fences, but they go up over a rock cliff someplace. I mean, you can't really build a great fence. You can't really get there that easy for one thing. So it's all got to be packed in on your back or a horse. And a lot of it's rock because this is the Rocky Mountains. So, and we're not talking like rocky ground. We're talking like solid rock. So where do you put a post in? You can't put a post in there. So the fences can't be great going through some of this country. And then a tree will fall down on the fence, or elk love to run through your fences.
Yeah.
I mean, so herds of elk, usually the first 10 will jump it, and then the next 100 just run right through the middle of it. So you got hold. Well, you get a few of them out, a few cows out. They might end up 15 miles away, and you won't see them until that fall when the final snow, because most people wrangle up all their cows out of the mountains, in October, usually September, and in October they ship calves. and then they turn cows back out, but they don't really go as high.
Mm-hmm.
But when the first snows hit, you'll get those last few cows that'll wander out of the mountain somewhere, and somebody will pick them up, and they'll look at the brand, and if they can't figure out whose they are, usually people know, because you're in an area where you've seen that person's cattle before. You're like, oh, these are so-and-so's cattle because of that brand. Then you'll put them in your pen and call them up and say, hey, I got 4 head of your cows over here. And so all like late fall, that's kind of a common occurrence where you just have to run 30 miles this way and around the mountains that way, picking up a few here and a few there.
That's something you don't hear back home. I mean, you better keep your own cattle on your own land.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But I guess the mountains here, they send cattle to the mountains in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's cooler up there.
Mm-hmm.
That meadow grass, it's beautiful.
It's really good grass. It just doesn't grow very long. But so you get up there and it's beautiful. But it's like, we're talking, tens of thousands of acres of super rough, broken country, stuff that's like incredibly steep, covered with timber or rock slides, or there's no roads, and a lot of that stuff. So when you lose cows back there, it's not like you can locate them with even a drone. It's not like you can find them with anything. I mean,
are people doing that?
They're trying now. The problem with drones is the battery life.
Yeah.
So, and I have a drone pilot's license. And so to fly a drone, you have to keep it within your sight.
Yeah.
Well, I can't fly it 2 miles away then and look for cows. But even then, I've tried to use it for something like that. But a cow standing underneath the tree, you ain't ever going to see, or sitting in this willow spring, or heavy patch of timber. I mean, you're just looking down and you're seeing this little tiny screen. If you take the recording, you can find them from that,
okay.
But, on a bigger screen. But when you're up there,
zoom in on it.
Yeah.
I really love up on the Bighorns, them meadows up in there. I've been there and seen all those, and there's so many beautiful places up in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started coming out, this is kind of a little funny thing. I looked at the mountains from long away, distance away. I never dreamed there was lakes up in them mountains.
Oh yeah, you can't see them.
Streams, and when you get to them, it's a different world.
And they don't even look that big from a distance. I mean, if you don't picture it in your mind, if you haven't been there, it's like you look across the lake here and you see this big set of mountains. It's like, oh, I should be able to ride right up that. Then you get over there and it's like 15 miles to get to the top of the thing. I mean, it's vastly bigger than you think when you get up on things.
We went over the Beartooths last June. Cook City, Red Lodge,
mm-hmm.
Chief Joseph Highway.
Yep.
That's my favorite trip.
Did you see any grizzly bears over there? Or?
No, but we've seen a white fox.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seen a bunch of mule deer, but no grizzlies. I've never seen a grizzly in person yet.
Well, just go up to Shoto. You see them all the time.
I've seen a lot of moose.
Have you?
Yeah, we sold a team of horses up at Anaconda to a guy
mm-hmm.
back couple summers ago. And we was at his house, and my wife and my partner's wife stayed in the truck while we went driving with this guy with his team.
Oh.
Well, we come back, and they wasn't in the truck. They had walked down the driveway down to the little, like a branch.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a moose, a bull moose all down in the water with his head out. And it was beautiful.
I'll bet. We can see about 3 moose every day from our house here down on this river, but this year they aren't there. I don't know where they went, but
wolves might have got them.
I doubt it right here. Usually, yeah, there was wolves here about a year ago or a year and a half ago. See, ever since we started hunting them in Montana pretty heavy, we haven't actually dropped the population of wolves at all in Montana. Even with as heavy as we're hunting them, they're very, very difficult to control. So there's about 1,200 in Montana. They just become a little bit more reclusive. But people don't realize that when one pack of wolves will cover a 70-mile square, or sometimes up to 100 miles. So they'll be gone for 2 weeks, and then they'll show up again for a couple days, and then they'll be gone again. So how do you hunt that? You can't, I mean...
You know where Jardine is?
Yeah.
There's a guy over there. I can't remember his name. He raises bucking horses, and he's doing wolf hunts over there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hell's Roaring you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. What the heck is his name?
I can't remember his name either, but super nice guy. I've talked to him on the phone, and he's charging people to come hunt wolves, like doing a commercial wolf hunt.
Well, down there they have enough wolves in that one area. There's way more wolves in a fairly small area that he probably figures, because I know another outfitter's down, not right there, but he's over in a different area. And he kind of has figured out when the 2 packs that are in his area are in that area. So he'll do wolf hunts because he knows they're going to be here for 3 days somewhere in this 10-day period, and then they'll be gone for 2 weeks. So you have to hit them right then, or they're gone somewhere again. I mean,
the wolves, I've never seen one, but back home we got coyotes like that. The coyotes are awful.
Yeah.
Like at our
Lots
house,
of coyotes.
We can be sitting in the living room just at night with the window open and just hear them all down through the holler.
Yeah, we can hear too. Yeah. There's one thing interesting about coyotes. Don't ask me why, because when Lewis and Clark came west, there wasn't any coyotes east of the Mississippi. They didn't even know, so they wrote about them out here because they hadn't encountered coyotes. Then when we eliminated wolves, we did it by poisoning carcasses. So they would take carcasses and poison them and kill them by the 100, which is, I think, the only way you would ever get rid of wolves. They're just so hard to hunt or even manage at all. We're trying to drop the population of wolves in Montana because we have so many of them, and we can't even with all the hunting stuff that we're doing now, we can't even drop it at all. It's just staying steady. So it's not like people get upset because they see the numbers that we're killing. Look at the numbers of wolves. We're not even budging that needle. But we were able to eliminate wolves back in the 1930s and 40s, and I think that was about it, late 40s. And then the government started putting bounties on coyotes. It was trying to eliminate predators because it's way better for ranching, right? Mm-hmm. Civilization, especially sheep, because coyotes take a lot of sheep out.
Oh, yeah.
The more that they persecuted coyotes to try to eliminate them like they did the wolf, the more prolific coyotes actually became. So the more that they tried to hunt coyotes specifically or trap coyotes, they started even spreading. They ended up with them all the way now to the East Coast, all the way down to Mexico. They're everywhere in the whole United States. They're in the middle of cities and everything. So the harder they tried to kill them, the more coyotes there was. Now, why that happened, I have no idea, because other species we've been able to really hammer, Yeah. If humans hammer them with no limitations or no regulations on it, like the buffalo, which is a totally different animal, but you're able to knock down the population like they did with wolves. And coyotes, apparently, you can't do that.
Are the wolves taking the elk a lot here? The young elk and the young mule deer or not?
Yeah. So the wolves are taking out a lot of game animals. And we're having a lot of problems right now in Montana with not only predators and not just wolves. I mean, we have right now, for some reason, it's become like the thing to do to protect all predators. So we're overrun in parts of the state with grizzly bears. But they're omnivorous, so they kill a lot of game animals, especially like babies, but they don't only eat meat. So they're out grazing in a grain field, know. But the mountain lions, people don't like you hunting mountain lions, so we're having huge problems with mountain lions. And mountain lions also are really sneaky and reclusive, so you don't see them very much. So, you can say, oh, we got a lot of mountain lions, and nobody believes you. But at one time, a year ago, all at once, there was 9 of them that they were having problems with around the one town of Helena, which is the capital city of Montana. Around that one town, they had 9 problem mountain lions. So that's how many we have. That's just in one spot. And then now wolves have become this issue of you can't touch them. We are hunting them, but everybody's trying to put it on the states and the Forest Service is getting sued right now by groups trying to put it back on the endangered species list because we're killing wolves, And I don't know what it is about predators that we can't kill them, but because I like game animals myself, love to see huge, massive herds of deer and elk.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't see that. Not only because of the predators are bad, and then now we have a couple diseases in Montana that are really kicking the mule deer's butt. I mean, the chronic wasting disease and blue tongue. Blue tongue usually doesn't hit the mule deer, but those two have, wiped them suckers out. The mule deer are really having a tough time.
We had some blue tongue problem in Kentucky before. I've heard
Did you?
people killing deer and saying it's got blue tongue. Don't eat it.
See, I don't know. I know that chronic wasting disease too. Out here, usually when we get blue tongue, it's not during the hunting season, and it like wipes they all die like so fast that you like wipe out a whole population of game animals in an area. Usually it's a really, and it's usually the whitetails because they kind of congregate in river bottoms and stuff a little more. But whitetails bounce back really fast. Mule deer don't seem to ever really like recover. I mean, they're concerning to me. I'm a big fan of mule deer myself. Love mule deer hunting. Love to see them. Just
to eat it?
Well, that's questionable because you try to hunt like the older, beautiful mule deer mountain bucks. They don't taste good at all.
I know, but back home, our whitetail deer, it's the best thing you'll ever eat.
Oh, you shoot one out here in the hayfield.
Yeah,
and they're like eating grain-fed something. I mean, they're just beautiful.
Your all's whitetail out here, though, they don't compare to ours back home.
As far as
we got big deer.
Oh, do you?
Big whitetail deer.
Really? Like body size or?
Yeah, body size and antler.
Yeah, with antler size out here, we're not quite as big. I mean, like a 150 class whitetail is really big. I mean, that's huge. So
when I first started coming out here, I noticed that's a thing out here. Like you say, oh, that's a whitetail. That's a muley.
Mm-hmm.
At home, you don't hear that because they're all whitetails.
Right, they're all whitetails.
Yeah.
And whitetails seem to bounce back from things really quick. I don't know why. I don't know if they like have 3 babies at a time all the time or what, but mule deer don't seem to do that. They don't bounce right back from something that happens to them.
Back at my mother and father-in-law's, anytime you walk out of the house, you'll see 8 or 10 mule deer in the yard.
Yeah, over in
they
Billings.
Stay there.
Yeah, we have a few that come right by the house here in the morning. You know, they go down to the river to drink and come right back up. They're a lot different in that way because they're more curious, less. They use their eyes more. The whitetails are more. You can always tell they're just more skittish. They're more reclusive. Yeah. They want to hide more. Where mule, they're not really concerned if they hide as long as they can see you. You know.
They had one back last year, a little buck, coming to their door. They named him Buddy.
Oh, yeah?
They could reach out and touch him.
Really?
He stayed right in the yard. And it wouldn't leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Mule deer are just different. I always enjoyed hunting mule deer up in the high country of because mule deer they'll live on the big ones. They'll live on some remote rocky mountain that nobody ever goes to. Literally, if you find one of those deer, you can kind of tell because they're like, what the heck are you? I mean, they don't even know what you are. They're not familiar with humans at all. And that was really the cool part is like, can you find one of those remote deer? That was always the thing for me. Now, those areas are so crawling with grizzly bears now that you have to, even then, but now so much so, you really have to watch your back when you're hunting those areas. But
have you had a grizzly encounter lately?
No, I've seen grizzlies lately in the last couple of years, but my uncles do constantly. They live in Shoto, and my uncle was walking. He had a deer stand on the back side of the fairgrounds. So, where they have the rodeos and stuff. So right on the other side of the fairgrounds, he had a deer stand that was overlooking a stream, and it was a huge meadow. Because that's the edge of town. Shoto's only size of town, so it was 1,800 people, something like that. And so he was walking through the corrals in the dark with his bow, no gun, because he's, on him right here, and ran right face to face with a grizzly bear, right in the dark.
I like Townsend, though. I like this little town. It's neat. One thing I like about coming out in Montana and stuff, all the old grain elevators in the towns. Yeah. I like taking pictures of them. It's just something I like doing.
They're really cool. I wish That's one of the things I've been really focusing on in my videos right now, which I'm doing some more series on, is that because most of the grain elevators you see aren't in use.
Let's talk about your YouTube channel to my viewers, because they may not know about it.
Oh, okay.
That way, maybe they want to subscribe to you and check you out.
As far as what I do, and
just tell them kind of what you do and how they find you on YouTube and things like that.
Well, if you go to YouTube, you can use @Life in the West to find me. The @ symbol Life in the West, all one word. That will get you to my channel. Or you can type in Life in the West. I think that'll bring you to it too. And a lot of stuff I do is in the summertime, a lot of my videos are moving cows or branding or, working bulls or something. Riding in grizzly country. I got one where we actually saw a grizzly. We chased a grizzly out while we were moving cows. You don't see that too much because usually they can hear you coming for a mile, so they're kind of gone. But in that country, that's the same country I was talking about. There's so many of them. And then now especially in the wintertime, I do a lot of interviews. And I really am focused on the fact that ranchers, especially in the West, have a very difficult time because they have one outlet for their beef, and that outlet is starting to get so centralized that they don't have any control over what price they get, and it's driving them out of business. It's forcing them out of business. But we've lost 107,000 ranchers in the last 5 years. So and people want to ranch, or at least people think they want to ranch until they actually do it. Mm-hmm. But it's something where the profit margins are so slim anymore that and so stressful because you're not in control of your own destiny, and the weather can get you. So I've been kind of going down that road. Like, why is the beef expensive in the store and yet the rancher's going out of business? Because record prices in the store, and it really comes down to the companies that are in between. The retailer and the packers actually control the market, and they dictate. Now they've pushed the price up so far for the retailer, for the person who's actually buying groceries in the grocery store. That price is as high as they can make it, and people still buy their goods. So the only way they can really make money now is to push the rancher's price down. So they use a lot of tools and get very creative to make the price they pay to the rancher less and less. And that is really pushing the rancher, especially since everything he uses is now way more expensive. But just in the last 2 years, fuel and fertilizer is massive. It's like doubled. And we see the same thing in the grain industry. Farmers are going out of business like crazy because we have same thing as the beef industry. So these are issues that really affect everyone who buys groceries, but they don't really realize that putting a rancher out of business affects them.
Well, back home in 2017, I remember it, right on the road my mom and dad live on in Casey County. 3 dairy farmers went out of business in the same week. Mm-hmm. My dad told me he milked my whole life. That's what I grew up on, was a dairy farm. Milk was costing him about $18 a hundred. Milk is sold by 100, which is 100 pounds.
100 pounds, yeah.
Yeah, weight. Mm-hmm. It's costing him $1,800 to make it, and they was paying him $1,300 for it.
Right.
He said, "I ain't got no choice. I got to stop."
Right.
They sold out, so they started just raising beef cattle. But right now, back home, the beef cattle people are thriving.
Well, you mean in the last year or two?
Yeah, in the last,
because the price went up.
The real last 6 months.
Yep. So the price went up pretty nicely. So they're trying to recover. They're using that now. Out in the West, we're at half capacity now because we've had so much drought that everybody's sold a lot of their herds, or at least half of their herd, to try to compensate for that. So they don't have any cattle left. So they're building back. So they're not able to sell while this price is high. But that price will not stay up because it stays up because the demand is there, right? But then this year they're going to get hit with something extra, which is the interest rates. So the ranchers that I know out here, every year they take out a massive loan, what they call an operating loan, mm-hmm. to run on. So everybody's thinking, wow, you're doing great because you got all this extra money from all these cattle. those operating loans, the interest on them have doubled. So if you have $1 million operating loan, your interest on that operating loan has gone up
4%,
huge.
5%.
It's 5.5%. It's gone up from 4.5 to 10, and that. Oh yeah, that is going to take every bit of profit that you made from the higher prices in cattle and then some. If you have an operating loan, so the only people that are going to benefit from that high price are the ones who don't have an operating loan, because that's gonna be really bad after this year.
Yeah, but a lot of people back home. Is chicken houses big out here at all?
No, because you mean as far as private things?
Like back home, a lot of the farmers are going to work for like Tyson, or certain companies.
No, we don't have that.
Build a big chicken house.
Yep.
The farmer pays to build the chicken house.
Mm-hmm.
Tyson supplies all the feed, all the chickens, and they do the labor. It's a big business back home right now.
Well, and see what that has taken away independent chicken raisers, because so that's the same thing that's happening in the beef industry now that's already happened in the chicken and the pork. What these companies have done is centralize the entire system. They don't want to own the farm, because that's where the risk is. Risk is in the property, maintaining the property, managing the actual animals, keeping them alive and all that. So what they do is they actually control all the way from the bottom to the top, and they just hire the rancher to do it. Now, instead of before, you had a whole, and what that's done is put so many people out of business, and now you have a few big ones that they'll hire the rancher. But as soon as when they start pushing that rancher down, he's just basically an employee now. And you'll see a lot of new ones when they shift over, because they'll be putting some out of business because they'll quit and they'll have to make new ones. But they own the entire industry except for. So instead of the farmer actually doing what he was originally did, which is raise food and sell it to a marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. Now, in those two industries especially, all he's doing is working for Tyson and Cargill.
Yeah.
And two of the major companies in the meat aren't even U.S. based. They're both in Brazil, JBS and Marfrig. But the same thing's happening to our grain industry. So we're outsourcing our food supply. That's the scary part.
Yeah, happened. I remember back whenever I was little in Kentucky, the main thing everybody had was a backer base. We call it backer. It's tobacco.
Okay.
We
gotcha.
Call it, we raise backer. That's what we say back home. But every farm back home, you'd buy a farm, you got the base with it. They call it a tobacco base. And you was allowed to raise so many pounds of tobacco for your farm. And then you took that tobacco and, you raised tobacco and sold it. It was major. That's how I grew up. We raised tobacco and milked cows.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I was like, I forget what year it was, but the state of Kentucky bought out all the bases.
Oh, they did? No more like the actual government?
Yep. Well, yeah, the government. I guess it was USDA. I'm not sure who it was. I was pretty young to really comprehend it, but they bought back all of the tobacco bases. There was no bases.
Okay.
So the only way the farmer could sell tobacco anymore, grow tobacco, was go to Philip Morris, go to RJ Reynolds, and sign a contract.
I see.
You sign a contract. We're going to let you grow this many pounds for this amount of money. In tobacco, you got different grades.
Mm-hmm.
We call it trash and lugs and tips. And so you can grow so much trash tobacco for this amount, so many lugs and so many tips, and this is what we're going to pay you. And, well, they made it to where you wasn't making enough money to even grow it.
Mm-hmm.
Used to, when the bases was going, we had tobacco warehouses all over Kentucky. And it was an auction. I remember Danville had one. Somerset had one. Everybody. And you could grow your tobacco in these little bales, like square bale hay, put it in a box and compress it. And the farmer that didn't have a lot of money could raise tobacco with a 25, 30 horsepower tractor and manually labor and make a bale of tobacco with a jack, put it on the bed of his pickup truck and take it to the auction and sell it and make money. Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds come along, you have to have this big type bale compressor now that makes a massive bale, 1,000-pound bale. The only way you can pick it up is with a skid steer or a loader. It put the farmers out. It's because these boys, these poor farmers back home, they couldn't afford to buy a skid steer or a loader.
Yep.
And that's why tobacco, you rarely see any tobacco fields in Kentucky now. When I was little, used to, it was everywhere.
Yeah. And so the first step in any of these industries is contracts. They always sound good. They sound good for the rancher, like, oh, I'm getting a contract, so I know what the price is going to be, right? The problem is, so does the person buying it. So if they can control the contract supply, meaning in like the beef industry, the packers now buy over 80% of their beef through contracts. And then since they're no longer really in competition with each other, because there's only 4 of them, they have to go by law to the cash market to set the price for the contracts, because you don't know what the contract price is going to be unless you set it.
Right.
So they'll decide what that is at the auction. So they'll bid against each other to whatever price that is that they've already determined it's going to be, and then use that price, because they don't actually need any beef from over here at the auction now. They've got 80% already set. Mm-hmm. So all they have to do is set the price. So they go to the auction, set the price wherever they want it, usually lower than what it needs to be. Then they'll come back to the ranchers and say, here's what the price is at the auction, so here's what we'll give you.
I remember used to these little feed stores back home.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd grow corn for the feed store, they'd give the farmer the seed.
Wow.
And like write it down. Hey, this farmer got this many bags of this corn seed. When he brings his corn back to us to sell it to us,
mm-hmm.
we'll take that money off. They helped each other.
Yep.
Those days are gone.
Well, and I just see it as we made a big mistake back when we decided that bigger business is always better. And what we did is we centralized all of our businesses. That's why we got Amazon, and I use Amazon. It's not like I don't use it. It's convenient, right?
We all do.
Yeah. Walmart, Amazon, those kind of things really created a problem. You need to take that? Okay. They created a problem in that instead of keeping the money local in an area where it's raised, where everything's raised and made, or bringing in products and then selling them to somebody that owns the store would then gain the profits, and they would use them profits to hire people, and the money would stay in the community.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't. You wonder why somebody like Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, is the now richest man in the world. It's because all the little communities, and little being relative, I mean all the communities, whether they're little or not, now use Amazon, which ships the profit out of that area to him. So instead of all that profit that Jeff Bezos has right now staying in local communities and actually creating it, they say it turns over 7 times in a community when it stays in a community like that, the profit. Now it's gone. It's shipped out immediately. So anytime when we create these systems that are more efficient in the name of efficiency, what we're really doing is shipping money away from these communities and then wonder why they're dying. Why are the communities dying? Well, it's because you shipped out all the money.
That's kind of like back at my house, Liberty, Kentucky. We're a huge Mennonite and Amish community where we live. That's what we live in.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that. It's kind of cool for people like from out here to come to our house and see our place, because all the business is done in the community.
Stays there.
We've got our own grocery, got salvage food stores, produce stores, feed mill, clothes store, and all these Amish and Mennonites all shop at all these local places.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool to see how that's still there. We still got, actually, in our community, a couple miles from our barn, we've still got an old mom and pop grocery store. You still go in there, they got an old potbelly stove. They'll still cut you a piece of bologna off with a knife and make you a sandwich. And
that's awesome.
Kind of like stepping back in time a little bit. But if you ever want to come to Liberty, Kentucky, you got an invitation. So.
That's all right. No, and that's the great part about that is when, let's say something happens in the world like COVID, or let's say a disaster happens in Ukraine. I mean, I don't know when that would happen, but, or Russia, let's say, decides to be weird about something, and you put the stop on all imports and exports from these certain countries. If you have a system like you just described, where the stuff that's grown locally goes through the local system and the money goes back into that community and then spreads out, you wouldn't even notice that something happened in Ukraine. As far as your supply chains, they would all be intact. But because they flow through very narrow channels, everything has to go through 4 companies now.
Mm-hmm.
Anything happens in those supply chains, and you notice it on the shelves of your grocery store. You notice it on the shelves of Walmart, because everything has to be, even though you might think it's more efficient, it disrupts very easily.
Like when COVID hit, not to bring up COVID because I know we all hate it, but
we all want to forget that.
Everybody's got their own opinion of COVID. Your opinion's fine, but when COVID hit at home, if I hadn't had the news, I never knew it hit.
Right, because of that system.
Our local stores, Mennonites and Amish, they never shut down. They never quit going to church. They all congregated the same. And just speaking true hard facts, we didn't lose any Amish or Mennonites during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
None. No mask, no nothing. And the people that flocked in there from Lexington, Cincinnati, Knoxville, Nashville. Our little community was booming during COVID.
We had the same thing here. People flocked out here because they wanted freedom, Well,
all these people, the shelves was bare in these stores.
That's what I hear. I hear in a lot of places that it was a lot of trouble getting food to your area. And so the system, like you're talking about, in a system where the stuff that you grow there goes to local, you wouldn't ever see that because it's still got to go somewhere, so it's still there.
They was coming and buying food at our local stores like crazy.
I'll bet.
But like the difference in back home and here, another thing, we kind of been talking about that on and off through this whole conversation, but here in this area, there's not a lot of people.
No, there isn't.
It's very rural. You don't have to have as much. Back home, it's just house after house after house. There's so many more people live back east.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have more stuff, So
yeah, the amount of people here is, even though we say, I don't know, it feels populated sometimes because everybody's jammed into valleys. Because you have mountains on both sides, you end up with a lot of people traveling certain corridors that are, there's no real way to get around it. Now you get off the corridor and there's nobody.
Yeah.
But the corridors are there, to travel through Montana. So you find like between Helena and Bozeman, there's a lot of people. But you get off 10 miles or 20 miles off of that route and you're in the middle of nothing,
Every time when I come out here, I can FaceTime my sister or my mom or, somebody, a friend of mine back home that's never been here.
Mm-hmm.
They say, "Where you at?" And I'll say, "Montana." They say, "Well, there ain't nothing there."
Nope.
Don't look like nothing's there.
No, that's right. Which is a little hard to fly in and out of sometimes because we're at the end of every route. But, we don't have any main hubs anywhere.
Billings is the main hub in Montana, and it's the biggest city.
Yeah. And Bozeman now is becoming, because it's grown so much, there's a lot of flights in and out of Bozeman. But they still, they only go one way. You have to fly to Bozeman and back out. I mean, and they're kind of expensive.
We got so lucky coming out here this trip. Got a flight out of Lexington to Denver and straight from Denver to Billings.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, you didn't have to hit like Chicago or Atlanta.
I have to on the way home.
Do you?
On the way home, I got to go Billings to Denver, Denver to Chicago, Chicago to Lexington.
Okay, yeah.
So
I don't like flying into Chicago because it's always got a crosswind of some kind, and it's pretty. Do you notice that too?
Well,
it's pretty bumpy flying into Chicago.
I'll be honest with you. First time I ever flew on a big plane was coming out here this trip.
Oh yeah.
I'm a country boy. I'm a Liberty, Kentucky hillbilly, I reckon. But now every time I come out here, I'm bringing horses or mules.
Right, so you're hauling them.
This is the first trip I've ever come out here without a trailer and a load of horses.
Right, which is a lot different.
I guess this podcast got me to do it.
Right.
But anyway.
I'll tell you what, it's a lot different driving across an area with no trailer.
I'll tell you one thing, though. I enjoyed that flight.
Did you?
I think I'm addicted.
Really?
Maybe a little bit.
Man, so I didn't mind flying at all until I was flying into Atlanta and flew through a lightning storm and everything was shaking all over the place. And people were screaming and hanging onto the back of the chairs, and they almost landed. Almost landed being we were 50 feet off the runway and disappeared into a cloud of fog, and they hit the gas and took back off again because they couldn't see the runway anymore. And they had to land in Augusta, Georgia or something. After that trip, I just don't enjoy flying anymore.
I'm glad my first trip wasn't like that. I got a little scared this time in Denver, though, because I had never landed in a big plane before.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Well, he kept circling around.
Yep.
And I noticed we was passing the same stuff over and over. I thought, what in the crap are we doing? But I'll be honest, that takeoff and that landing, that's an adrenaline rush.
Yeah. Yep. It is.
I was all worried. Everybody back home was saying, your ears are going to be popping. You better take some chewing gum and take you some pills for getting sick. And I didn't pop once.
Didn't you?
I had a blast.
Yeah, good.
I liked it. So
just don't, it'll get less enjoyable if you get next to somebody who's really, really terrified, because there's a couple people that I've sat next to coming into Bozeman, or Helena, I guess. When you come into Helena, you got to go right over this mountain range, and it gets pretty bumpy every time. It's not as bad as Chicago to me, but it gets pretty bumpy, and some people really start freaking out about that.
It was pretty bumpy coming over the Bighorns from Denver to Montana, but we was on one of them big jets, I forget the number, but it had like 3 rows of seats.
Yeah.
And that sucker, I was sitting there looking at the screen on the back of the seat, 545 mile an hour. I thought, well, it ain't going to take but an hour to get there.
Yeah, most of it's taking off and landing.
We got from Denver to Billings in an hour and 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
And I've drove that trip, Denver to Billings, many times. You know how long it takes to drive that? Like probably 8, 9, 10 hours with horses and kids.
Oh, yeah.
I looked at my wife and I said, I don't want to drive that again.
Right, no kidding.
That was a quick trip. So. All right. Well, buddy, I sure appreciate you letting me come out here and meeting with you and talking to you. I've learned a lot more about you by this podcast too. So,
well, hopefully so. You never know about podcasts, you know, what you're going to talk about. So we covered a lot of different subjects, and hopefully it's a little bit helpful to somebody.
It's good. That's one of my goals on this podcast. I just want to bring people together of all different walks of life in the equine ranching industry. And you're definitely one I wanted to get on here. So,
all right. Well,
let's
appreciate you coming out.
About your YouTube. Make sure they know that.
And they can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Oh, wow.
With Life in the West, or searching my name, Trinity Vandenacre.
Awesome. And also you can find us on all that as well, Haste Draft Horses and Mules. So y'all know that. So we sure appreciate you. And until the next one, God bless each and every one of you, and thank you, and we'll see you soon.
As another captivating episode of Harness Up with Haste Draft Horses and Mules draws to a close, we extend our sincere gratitude to our listeners for joining us on this enlightening journey. We hope today's discussions have deepened your appreciation and understanding of these magnificent creatures. Remember, the adventure continues beyond this podcast. Stay connected with us on social media and share your stories. For more information and to explore further, visit drafthorsesandsmulesforsale.com. Thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, keep harnessing your curiosity and passion for these God-given creatures. Farewell for now.